Hey everyone, it is episode 492 of This Is Whole Life. It is the Barn Party edition, and we're mere minutes away. Maybe what, 60, 90, 120 minutes, something like that from Barn Party.
Sounds good.
We're between messages this morning.
Barn Party starts at 4, so that would be about 5 hours. So
he's talking to all the volunteers.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. Well, kind of. Yeah. I mean, the fun doesn't start till then, but
the fun starts right away.
The fun starts at
the fun started a long time ago.
That's right.
Yeah, the fun started about a year ago, and now here we are again.
Kudos, Freud.
Yeah, kudos, Freud and Carla.
Yes.
Carla, yeah.
It's going to be a good time. So if you're listening to this, we've already had a good time because we already know that that's going to happen. And if you didn't make it this year, put it on your schedule for next year. It's the second Saturday of every November. It happens right here at the Whole Life Church in downtown Orlando. And this happens every week at the Whole Life Church. Speaking of, this is Whole Life. And we go a little bit deeper into the messages. And this message would also welcome your thoughts. Podcast at wholelife.church or voicemail text 407-965-1607. And we'd love to add your thoughts or questions to the conversations. And as always, it is to my left and across the table is Melanie Bachman, our worship pastor. Right to my right, not right to my right, or could be right to my right. Ken Wetmore. Wow, I was going to say Ken Bachman. That doesn't work. Ken Wetmore. Tim, sorry. No, Ken Wetmore, our lead pastor. Next to me is my partner at the communication department, Lucas, and I'm Randy. And today we are diving deeper into, this is the third message of 5, right? 4? 4? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the penultimate.
No.
Next.
There's 2 more. This was the second message.
This was second?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was thinking, yeah, that's right, second, because we were talking about Elisha last week and Elijah. So that would be correct. So this is today's message. It is November 8th, and if you swipe up in today's show notes, you'll find our sister podcast, Speaking of Grace, episode 285 with the same title. Same title?
Is it Barn Party Week or what?
I don't know what's going on. The same title, double portion. Pick me if you'd like to hear the message that our discussion this morning is going to be based on. And speaking of people and conversations and how we'd like to hear more from you, this week we got an email from Nate that said, listening to the discussion on the podcast about Elijah being taken to heaven without dying, I'm drawn to the idea that God shows mercy and grace. David was described as a man after God's heart. He definitely doesn't fit the image of a, quotes, perfect person. I see Elijah as another person who we get to see what God's grace and mercy looks like.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, Nate, couldn't agree more.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. My wife is very disturbed by my theory on Elijah, by the way. She's like, that is because she likes Elijah. And she's like, I don't think he was the grouchy old man that you're making him out to be.
Really?
Yeah.
So
theological differences in the Wetmore house.
Well, Rochelle, we'd love to hear your vision of Elijah.
I feel like we need to have Rochelle come on and hear the
herself?
discussion. Hear the discussion about this.
No, I'm happy to go ahead and summarize her views.
He's like, no. Rochelle, you could call or text the voicemail or send us an email, and we'd be happy to go over.
If you can figure out when we're taping, you're welcome to show up too.
Yeah, of course. You never know these days when we might be doing that. So this week, the message was
pick me.
Pick me. So who did we pick this week? Was it Gehazi?
He played a small role
in
this week's.
So who is?
It was more of a cameo.
Yeah, it was to make a point.
So is he like the 40 Ute from last week that got ripped with the bear?
Probably a little bit more prominent than that.
A little more prominent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this week's message really was about what Elisha was asking for when he asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit.
Okay.
And in the sermon, I talk about how when I was a kid, I always thought that Elisha was asking to be twice as awesome as Elijah, that, a double portion. So I want to do twice as many miracles. I want to be
twice as holy,
twice as good a speaker. I want to twice what?
Twice as holy.
Twice as holy.
Oh, I thought you said that. twice the bully.
Yeah, I heard that. I
was like, wow. Okay, well, I guess
it is Barn Party Week.
Yeah, we're all hearing things. So anyway, so the point that I hope that people took away was that that what was really happening was Elijah was asking to be the spiritual heir of Elijah's ministry, because a double portion in those days was what the eldest son received from the father when the father passed away. And that meant that he was the next in line. So when you look at all the genealogies in Matthew and you see them in the book of Numbers, it's like the oldest son to the oldest son to the oldest son to the oldest son to the oldest son. So, and so Elisha is asking to be Elijah's heir. He's saying, I want to take over your ministry. I want to continue on what you've done. And we talked about how the oldest child, the reason they got a double portion was not because they were just happened to win the genetic race and they're the firstborn, but they received that double portion because they were responsible for taking care of the rest of the family. And they were, if mom was still alive, they had to take care of her for as long as she was alive. If they had unmarried sisters, they had to take care of those sisters, provide a dowry from them. If they had disabled siblings or siblings that were minors, they had to take care of those siblings.
So the double portion was fair.
Not only fair, it was actually probably a little less by the time everything gets done, depending on how big your family was. You know, in my family, I have a younger brother, Eric. That's my son. I have a younger brother, Chris. And in our case, I would get, we were living back in those times, I would receive 2/3 of my parents' estate. He would receive 1/3. But what happens if you're like, you know, like Jacob's family? There's 12 brothers.
Yeah,
you really get 2/13 of the estate. So you're really not receiving a huge amount. And keep in mind, in most families in those times, they were large. They were not,
not
like here in the U.S. with a smaller family. And so that double portion would go really quickly because of all the expenses that you had, that you were expected. You were expected to pay the property taxes, any debts that your father left behind, you had to pay off. The younger siblings weren't responsible for you, were responsible for that. So rather than being a privilege, it was actually a responsibility.
So what would the spiritual equivalent to that be? If you're in this case, if you're Elisha asking for, I want this part of your ministry, and not that there was anybody else necessarily in line. I mean, maybe I don't know, but seems like what would that look like responsibility wise? I guess spiritually.
Such a good question, Randy. He was spiritual. He was responsible to continue the spiritual legacy. It was his responsibility to take care of Israel, to be Israel's prophet, to suffer, to literally carry the mantle that Elijah was leaving behind, to continue on that ministry and that prophetic gift. There were other prophets, but Elisha, it was his responsibility to carry on that legacy, to make the sacrifices that need to be made, to do the nurture that needed to happen. And that's where Gehazi jumps into this story, is that in the story of Naaman comes with about $10 million worth of funds.
Gehazi.
Yeah, to be healed. He's wanting Elisha to heal him for pay. And Elisha tells him to go dip in the Jordan. He comes back, and Elisha just basically makes the point, I can't take your money because I didn't heal you. Yeah. God did. Yeah. And you want to thank somebody, thank God by living for him. Be a better person, Naaman, because Naaman was the general of one of the armies that was oppressing Israel. And so basically Elisha says, hey, I don't want your money. I want you to actually follow God, do the right thing. I didn't heal you, so I don't deserve any money. And that's where, if you feel like as the eldest, as the heir, that you're owed something because of that, well, then Elisha should have taken the money. He's like, I am the heir of Elijah. I do deserve to get something this ministry doesn't happen for free, I mean, there are expenses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Elisha really felt like the more important lesson for Naaman was to understand that you can bring $10 million, but God's not for sale. And God wants your heart, not your money. And so he sends him away. And Gehazi, the Bible records that he thought, how can my master let this foreigner get away without paying something? We deserve something for this. So he slips away, runs after Naaman, and stops Naaman and goes, "Hey, these young men who are prophets showed up at our place. They could use some clothing, a little bit of silver." And basically, Gehazi, I told you, Naaman brings about $10 million with him, right, in silver, gold, and clothing. Gehazi only asked for about $60,000.
Wow.
So, out of it's nothing compared to $10 million. He just asked for about $60,000. And when he returns and hides the money and doesn't tell Elisha knows because God reveals it to you. You have to wonder whether Gehazi was paying attention to, to the fact that God was talking to Elisha. But Elisha confronts him and says, "Is this really the time to be taking money?
Yeah.
Do you really think this is what you should be doing? Wrong. And God's going to punish you for this. Since you wanted what Naaman has, God's going to give you what Naaman had."
Oh. And
he says, "You get. If you want his money, you got his leprosy too." And
he should have asked for the whole 10 million.
He should have. Yeah, he should have done something. But here's the thing: he thought he was going to get away with it and this is the difference between Elisha and Gehazi. Elisha asks for a double portion because he wants the responsibility. He wants the responsibility of continuing Elijah's ministry and what that means. Gehazi apparently is like, he could have asked for a double portion of Elisha's spirit. Who knows what he would have done? But he's more interested in the money. He's more interested in the perks of being a prophet. What can I make out of this versus how can I give and how can I further God's kingdom? And so it's really a very telling thing, and I think it matters. And I don't really hit it very hard in the sermon, but it is something that really kind of hit in my thought process as I was putting the sermon together. Seventh-day Adventists, we have a doctrine that we call the doctrine of the remnant. And a remnant is like the little leftover piece of garment that's left over at the end of something. And the whole idea within this theological construct that we have as Adventists is that when Adam passes on his spiritual line to Seth, Seth then passes on to his sons, eventually winding up with Noah. Then from Noah, this spiritual line of God winds up with Abraham. And God says to Abraham, "I'm going to make you a great nation." And he actually says the Israelites will be my firstborn. Okay. In other words, you have a responsibility. It's not about I'm going to bless you just because I like you better than everybody else. It's no, I'm blessing you so that you can be a blessing, so that you can go into the world and be a blessing to the world. So the Israelites take that blessing, and what we see throughout the Old Testament narrative is that they really enjoy the blessings of God, but the responsibility they're a little less enthusiastic about, and they don't follow through on God's commands and doing the things God has asked very well. And so eventually, this is where in Daniel chapter 8 and 9, or chapter 9 specifically, God says through Daniel, I'm going to give you this 490-year period to go ahead and figure out the whole purpose of being a firstborn. I'm paraphrasing and adding a little bit there. But he basically says, I'm going to give you 490 years to figure out what it means to be a firstborn, or what it means to really pass my blessings on. And if you can't figure it out in 490 years, then I'm going to have to make somebody else my firstborn who will actually do what I need them to do. And so as Christians, we believe that when the Israelites said, this whole thing, we're not into it, Christ passes it on to his church at that point, which is made up of Israelites and Gentiles and everybody. Everybody has this opportunity, if they choose, to be the new firstborn, because Christ is the firstborn and we are his bride. We belong to him. We're his firstborn. And so Seventh-day Adventists see that when when again Christianity kind of goes sideways during the Dark Ages, the Reformation happens and kind of gets back on track. And then Seventh-day Adventists see that the denomination is the next spiritual heir that comes along and says, hey, this is who God is. God loves you. God wants you to be part of his family. We have a responsibility to share this information and to pass along the spiritual blessing. And I often find that I feel like there's some Seventh-day Adventists that take this remnant theology and they go, oh, we're better than everybody else. We're God's chosen people. We're special. We're the remnant, blah, blah, blah. And instead of seeing it as a responsibility, they see it as a privilege. It's, oh, lucky us. We have the truth. We have this. We have that. And and there tends to be a hoarding of it and it's like a better than superior thing, as opposed to, hey, you're the oldest, you're responsible.
Yeah.
You're responsible to take care of things and do some things. And so for me, when I look at that, I really, at Whole Life, we are very blessed to have a wonderful church. But what I never want people to lose track of is coming here to receive a blessing is fine. Being the firstborn is a blessing. But if you think it's just about you and it's just about taking in and what you can get, you are really missing out on what God is really asking of us here at Whole Life, which is to be a firstborn and to return in that blessing and make the world a better place and take care of the rest of God's kids and the rest of this world, and to really make the world a better place. And as I told the congregation today, it's one of the reasons why we do our barn party. On the outside, maybe people think, oh, we do it because we want to have a nice social event for our church. Well, no, the whole reason we do this is we want to have a social event for our community. We want to open the doors on our property and say, here we are. We have this amazing event that we want to include you in, to have you be a part of. We want to go ahead and let you get to know us a little bit and see who we are. And that's why we do that. It is an opportunity for you to invite your neighbors, to invite your coworkers, to invite people to come and say, hey, this is the church that I hang out with. We feel pretty blessed at this church because we are coming into contact with Jesus, and we're seeing what Jesus can do in our lives, and we want Jesus to be able to do the same for you. And so this is the reason why we do the things that we do here at Whole Life. And I want us, as we look at the story of Elisha, to walk away from it and say, firstborn doesn't make you better than everybody. It gives you more responsibility. It means that you have to be responsible for the extra portion that you've been given.
I also think it's really problematic to see the inheritance as information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're taking from this.
Yeah.
You know, God's people throughout history, the whole point of God's people is to bless the entire world. It's to make the world a better place for everybody around them. And when we say, oh yeah, that's really nice, and so the blessing that we have that we're going to share with everybody is information, I think we're missing out on a whole lot of stuff.
It's very easy to be cynical, though. Elisha had the prophet school, right?
School of the Prophets.
School of the Prophets.
Yeah.
So
and that was actually running during Elijah's time as well.
Time, but then he took it over.
Yeah.
So there was a use for silver.
Sure.
And there was a use for these things
Absolutely.
he asked for.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was just being super greedy where it's like, man, my wardrobe is going to be lit.
You're talking about Gehazi?
Yeah. Plus I'm going to have,
it would actually appear that he was actually being pretty greedy.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like he very much was trying to use the funds to benefit he and his family.
Okay. Sounds like at
it's
least
kind of
at
a
that
secretive
he does.
transaction.
Firstly, there are no prophets that came. He makes that story up for Naaman.
Gotcha.
And then he hides it. Like if he was trying to actually do good for the schools of the prophet, he wouldn't have been hiding it from Elisha, but he does. He tries to hide it. And this story actually has parallels to the story of Achan that occurs earlier in the Old Testament narrative, but where Achan takes money out of Jericho, buries it in his tent. It actually takes money and a Babylonian garment, which is very similar. Yeah, which is very similar to what Gehazi does as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting thinking of it. Now that we're talking about firstborns, I'm thinking about different sets of brothers in the Bible. And I was thinking about, Tamar. Was it Tamar's son where like one kid stuck his hand out, but then like technically he was the firstborn. They wrapped a little ribbon around his hand, but then he went back in and his brother was born first. So that's like, who's actually the firstborn in that situation? I don't know. The one that got all the way out, I guess.
I feel like it's the one that gets all the way out. I think, partial jailbreak doesn't count.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think he wins. The other thing that's curious is, Jacob takes his brother's inheritance.
I was just going to say that
Esau sells it to him for pottage, or as my son used to say when he was really little, pot roast. Esau sold his birthright for pot roast.
I wouldn't do it for porridge, but I would for pot roast.
Pot roast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then Jacob the deceiver, puts hair on his arms and goes into his father's and receives the blessing that was meant for Esau. And it makes me wonder if he was not the Decepticon that he was, and Esau went in for that blessing, would the whole Old Testament be about the Edomites instead of the Israelites?
Interesting.
You went Decepticon on me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was
Although the Bible says that from the beginning, God said, Jacob I have chosen, Esau I have despised.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's also becomes really, I think, also an interesting conversation is how many times God skips the oldest brother. Jacob is not an oldest.
Right.
Then when, and by the way, it's fascinating to me that in Deuteronomy, God through Moses says that if you have two wives and you love one more than the other, you don't get to go ahead and make the oldest son of the one that you love your heir. You have to go with the firstborn child. And if the firstborn child comes to the wife you love less, you have to go with that. Well, Jacob doesn't do that. Jacob actually blesses Joseph's kids and makes them his true heir. And there's some who say, well, that's because his true oldest son slept with one of his concubines, and that's probably not unfair. But Joseph is still not even the oldest after that, really. And so it's a fascinating thing where when you look at these different things, there are things that happen. David, Solomon,
Yeah.
not the oldest. So it is a fascinating thing to see how the line sometimes gets passed and doesn't, and how the eldest sometimes works out and sometimes doesn't.
Well, I'd never heard the remnant described, or its origins, or how we come to that. But I like the definition that you came up with better than what I've traditionally grown up with and have heard. And I guess I never really thought that much about it because it just doesn't sound like, oh, hey, this is, we have it, you don't, na kind of thing. Like I never, that's not appealing.
It changes it, doesn't it? If it's a responsibility that you're carrying, that you're like, hey, we are fortunate and we have a responsibility. God's given us something very specific that God needs us to accomplish. That changes things. It's like in the military, and happy Veterans Day, by the way, maybe
absolutely.
A day after Veterans Day when you're listening to it or more. But if you're a vet, hey, thank you so much for your service. We are so grateful to you, and our nation is grateful to you. Our church is grateful to you. Thank you for defending freedom. We appreciate that. And in the military, there's a lot of different units. And one of the things that you quickly learn in the military is that, special forces are pretty special. They're able to do pretty incredible things, and yet they're without the support teams.
Yeah,
they're not able to do the things that they need to do, and the only reason that they're in special forces is to train them to be able to do things that regular folks couldn't do.
Yeah,
and so I think that when you start thinking about how God wants to preserve a true knowledge of who He is and what He wants and what matters. It makes sense that He would entrust that to people and say, hey, go spread the word, bring more people in. And that's always been what God's wanted. But it seems like as human beings, it's always like you start off okay, and then you're immediately like, no, let me hoard. This is mine. I'm better. I'm the firstborn. I'm special. I'm God's favorite. And instead of being like, hey, I'm not God's favorite. God just gave me something very specific to do for Him.
Yeah. I think it makes it easier too when people sometimes hear what that message is or what that information is and go, that doesn't sound right to me. And you get rejected, or maybe even, harshly rejected. Like that's just stupid. That doesn't, and then you're like, well, fine. If you don't want to hear it, why am I beating my head against the wall, taking abuse to try to convince you of something that, you believe to be, what God wants you to do, and then doesn't work out. Not many people, I just feel like a lot of us don't go back for seconds. It's like, oh, well, that was a lot of fun. Let's try that one. Let's do that more. Let's do that more. So, I mean, I get that part of it, but when it becomes like some kind of a badge of honor or,
and you don't really know how many pieces that remnant is torn into. There can be a remnant of a remnant of a remnant of a remnant. So
a remnant divided will not stand with itself, but it won't also stand against itself. So
okay.
Right?
That is a whole new perspective on remnants. Thank you.
My wife's an interior designer. I know all about remnants.
Gotcha.
So anyway. So next, so wait a minute. Do we have any questions that we didn't cover in the sermon?
Yeah, I think.
What you got?
I don't remember if the first one was covered or not, but there's one here that I'm sure it wasn't. When Elisha asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit and later watched him taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire, do you think he expected that one day he experienced the same kind of ending to go to heaven without dying too?
Oh, great question. I don't know. I'm if I'm him, I'm kind of hoping for that.
Right. I mean, just to see that, just to try to put yourself in that situation and think of what's happening around you. It's coming the end, and you're the new, and there's probably a ton of things going around in your head. Maybe planning, but to see that has to do something to you, right? Like it has to change. Man, I thought God was powerful, but wow. Or this is, or what did I just see? I just feel like
I think if
there's a lot
fire
there.
came down from heaven and got Ken and took him somewhere, we would all be really impressed. I think that would make an impression.
Ken would be impressed.
Oh.
Be like, really? Me?
See ya, suckers.
No, it's true though. If someone, I can't imagine something like that. Not that, God can do whatever he wants to do, but to actually witness something like that firsthand has to be just
it's been a while since somebody's been taken to heaven in a fiery chariot. I feel like maybe we're due.
It's time.
Well,
Ken's like,
go stand in the parking lot, Ken. Let's see what happens.
maybe from the top of the Ferris wheel tonight.
What's wrong with you guys? Why don't you love me?
No.
We want the best for you.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
That is
That's
the
what
best.
it's sounding like. I'm not sure you're thinking of a true fiery.
It's not, because Ken and I we've already done the pinky swear that when Ken retires, I retire.
Yes.
And vice versa. Although Ken
is.
might have to retire a couple years earlier because I'm a little older than he is. So
And we'll do what we have to do. We'll both get our chariot of fire
at the same time.
It's called a wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That
That stings a
I
little.
just don't even know where to go with that.
Let's check the other question and see if it's one, and then we can edit it if it's already been.
Yeah. If we ended up with a double portion, how do we responsibly manage and invest in it? I think of the parable of the talents and the managers in that. They were expected to invest wisely. How do we do that?
What a great question. There are so many different ways, but I think that, the whole time, talent, treasure idea is, where do you see God working and how are you investing in it? Here at Whole Life, we think that we see God working here. And so we ask people to invest in it. We ask you to invest in the vision that we have of spreading who Whole Life is to other places and to grow in God's kingdom here on earth through a church that cares, that loves people into whole life with God, and that doesn't put up walls, that moves walls out of the way for people. We ask you to do that by volunteering. It's like we need help with the different events that we do, with reaching out in the community. We need your time. We need your talents, the things that you're good at doing. We also need your financial support. We need you to financially support what's happening here at Whole Life. And we're really grateful for the tithe that people pay. And that tithe goes straight to the Florida Conference. And it goes to furthering the mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church around the world. Whole Life benefits with administrative support and four pastors, but we have 13 people on staff here. And what really makes Whole Life be able to do what it does, because I've been at the last church I was at had 1,600 members, which is about 400 more than we have on the books here. And we had a pastoral team of 4 as well, but we had only one locally hired person that was basically our church administrator. And so there was 5 people on staff. And I can just tell you, it was a wonderful church. Appreciate it very much. But what Whole Life is able to do
it's great.
is exponential because we have the team that's able to do it, who's able to motivate, that's able to get out and work with our volunteers. It's able to grow these things. And so the growth that I'm watching here is it's just amazing. And so, but that requires financial support, and that comes in the form of church budget. That comes in the form of offerings. So we really appreciate your tithe. We really appreciate that church budget and offering. I mean, just something as simple as like the fact nobody likes to think about, I had to replace the roof on my house, I think about a year and a half ago. And nobody likes doing that. It's a lot of money. I was trying to figure out how insurance could do it. And the insurance company laughed at me. It's like, your roof is 22 years old. You can replace it yourself. It doesn't matter what hurricane came through. It's time. And the same thing's happening at the church. I mean, we have a roof that's original to this building, which makes it almost 35 years old, I think.
What, 92?
92.
Wasn't
so
it?
what is that?
So,
So 33? 34 years old. And the roof is original. So God has been very kind to us and helped us get a lot of life out of it, but we're having to replace it now. Unfortunately, we've saved money, so we have money in the bank that we can do it, but wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to take that money out? But we're talking about, a roof is going to run us, I think, right around $400,000 on a building this size. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And again,
but we've been dry and air conditioned for 34 years, right? So
no, but my point is, in order for this church to operate, we have to have people that believe in the vision that we have and say, hey, I'm going to support that and make sure that things are maintained, that we're spending money on reaching our community, that we're spending people are reaching people with the gospel of Jesus and making sure that people are having their lives transformed. And so there's a lot of different ways. And what I always tell people is just prayerfully ask God where he wants you to invest. Where does he want you to invest your time? Where does he want you to invest your money? And if you don't hear God speak directly to you, use your best judgment. Where do you see things happening that an impact is being made? Where do you feel impressed to volunteer your time? Where do you feel impressed to donate your money? Ask God about that. And I trust people to listen to God and make the decisions God's asking them to make. What I ask doesn't matter. It's what God asks you to do that matters.
Yeah. Well, like you said, with those staff, some of the other things, I think we mentioned this on last week's podcast or maybe 2 ago about, how many people are on campus every week that rent the building from us to hold their events and whatever. Well, it takes a team of people to coordinate and make sure that happens, to bring those resources in that can, help that mission and vision move along.
I would say on an average week, more than 1,500 people come through this building.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say that would be a pretty.
And it's funny, I've met 3 people at church over the last 2 at church and 1 at AHU Fall Picnic. I haven't seen this person since I left Valak, which was 9-10 years ago. And they worked, we used to do new employee orientation for Advent Health employees. I was working for Valak. She worked for the foundation at the time. And we would always, have to sit and meet all the new employees every week. And I was like, man, I think I know this person. And she came over and she's like, your hair looks different, but she's like, Randy, what's going on? And I had to look, I'm sorry, Dina. I had to look at her. I had to look at the name tag because I couldn't remember what her name was. But people that have come in contact with us and with our church through those spaces, and then have been like, hey, I'm coming to Barn Party. I come to church here now because I was introduced through one of these other situations. And that's a pretty cool thing to be able to say that it happens at your church because your church is open and it doesn't have that musty smell during the week, right? That's pretty awesome. Okay, cool. That's it for this week. Let's see. Ken is going to be gone this week, but you're going to be back in time to preach.
I'll be back in time to preach.
Oh, that's dedication. Wait, is that fire? Chariot? No. All right, anyway, that's a double portion right there. So next week is week 3 of this series.
Week 3, and we're doing Fearless.
Which is, do we have any?
We're going to talk about some of the miracles that that Elisha performed, but we're specifically going to be talking about the time that Elisha and his servant were surrounded by a foreign army, and the servant is terrified, and Elisha says, "Don't worry about it." And we'll talk about why he doesn't think you have to worry about it, why you can be fearless.
Yeah, that's like seeing the chariot of fire and be like, "Yeah, it's fine." It's
and
normal.
the abundant. I'll just give you this: we're going to be singing "God of Angel Armies" because that song was actually based off of this story.
Off that story.
Yep.
Wow, cool. Well, you're not going to want to miss that.
Full circle.
Full circle. That'll be the penultimate, and then we will move on to the final, and then we'll be on to something else.
By the way, for those who are asking why a chariot of fire didn't come for Elisha, next week may answer that question.
Ooh.
Everything you wanted to know but didn't dare ask shall be revealed next week. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you guys had as much fun at Barn Party as we did. Thanks for listening, and have a fantastic week.